But so we are just thrilled to have you with us here today, Kim.
Thank you.
And I'm Sue Riley. I'm the director for the Family Business Alliance. And we're just thrilled to have this collaboration today with the Small Business Development Centers, NEPA Alliance, and the Greater Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce to help pull this program together on workforce, how to attract and retain top performers. We're happy to have with us today Elizabeth Giza, who is a program coordinator with the SBDC at the University of Scranton, Jolene Carey Pace, the program coordinator from the SBDC at Wilkes University, Kurt Bauman, who is the Vice President, Community Economic Development at NEPA Alliance, and Lindsay Griffin, who is the Vice President of the Greater Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce. And it was with the Wyoming Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Luzerne County Chambers that we held industry roundtables through the Evolve program last fall. And as we were talking with different industries, the issue that kept coming up was workforce. And it was an issue prior to COVID and obviously exacerbated through it, but then really looking for ideas and plans for growth as we go beyond it. So as we work through that, we were thinking that, Kim, with your extensive knowledge in this area, it would be great to have you make a presentation for us. Kim is the founding partner of Vantagen, which is now Baker Tilly Vantagen. And she is the president, and as president created an overall vision, which is focused on bringing human resource strategies in a customized fashion to clients. Baker Tilly Vantagen specializes in delivery solutions that are focused on both technology and optimal client service. Kim is experienced in all aspects of human resources and specializes in compliance, HR strategy and development, employee benefits, and compensation. In her role as president, Kim oversees all major client development initiatives and operations. She's also responsible for Baker Tilly Vantagen's thought leadership, having published articles in numerous periodicals and in a variety of human resource topics and trends. Kim, we're thrilled to have you with us today with your vast experience to help us through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for that introduction. I see I've got some familiar faces here. So welcome back for those that have participated in the HR roundtables before through the Family Business Alliance. It's always a great group and a lot of conversation. The presentation is kind of lengthy. We've got a lot of ground to cover, as Sue mentioned earlier. So we do have room for questions at the end, but if anybody has, what I would suggest is possibly use the Q&A or the chat function within Zoom so that we can capture all of these questions and address them if they come up during the slide. But with that, I am going to stop my video so that I can really talk and we'll go through this deck. But thank you everybody for coming today. So I labeled this, we have these HR roundtables and the focus has really been on recruitment and retention, but today is like, where do we go from here? We're still in a pandemic, and 2020 and even now into 2021 has certainly thrown HR professionals for, quite a few curveballs. And I know as business leaders, owners, and managers, it certainly has done the same for you as well. So just a look back to 2020, and this look back is not on really actual things that happened, but it was really where we started off 2020 and what we believed the HR strategies were going to be able to help with this recruitment and retention of employees. So, recruitment and retention of employees was a critical issue. We had unemployment at around 3% average, the labor pool shrinking, increased competition, and was really the number one problem with business owners, leaders, HR professionals is how do I get good people and how do I keep them? So, the strategies that were really starting to be put into place and focused on were focused on that employee experience. Again, creating flexible work schedules, taking a stand on social issues, again, knowing that generationally, the Gen Zs and the next gens are really cognizant of an employer that is socially active and in alignment with their beliefs. Improving gender diversity, again, coming out of the Me Too movement, this was something that was top of mind. We also needed to have an agile approach to recruitment and employee development. You had to be out there quick. When you found a good candidate, you had to make offers very, very quickly. And you couldn't have the one size fits all approach. Again, knowing that we are in a unique hiring environment with the competition for labor was fierce, we really had to have customized plans. We also wanted to apply the consumer marketing lens to HR. So again, it's how am I selling myself? Do we have a crystal clear definition of our employee culture? How are we supporting the company brand? And how do we sell our own employees on the value proposition? And then we also talked a little bit about artificial intelligence in HR. Again, it was an upcoming trend of the use of chatbots and increased technology in the human resource area, so that it would allow HR professionals more time for that personal approach and touch, focusing on, the three items ahead of that. So 2021, the reality, where did that go? What did really happen? We know that we had the pandemic really start to shut the entire country and the world down in March. We quickly had to modify our some businesses closed, some businesses went remote, some businesses had a mix of both remote employees and essential employees. It really was, and still is, a crisis that we've never seen before. And as an HR professional, really had, put our skills to the test, because we had to react to worksite conditions very, very quickly, with no guidance. And again, it wasn't a one size fits all. We really had to address things very uniquely. So for 2021, again, the top issue still remains the same: recruitment and retention of employees. However, many more challenges and different priorities in achieving that goal, versus what we just talked about, what the 2020 trend was going to be, and how the pandemic has changed that. First and foremost, health and safety of employees, number one on the list. That was pretty much table stakes. Yes, of course we have health insurance, and we always keep our employees safe. I don't even need to talk about that in the interview. Now, it's priority. People want to know, how are you doing it? How are you unique? How are you better than other employees when it comes to health and safety of employees? Creating, or if not mandating, flexible work schedules. So work from home is here to stay, but also those organizations where, now I possibly have extended hours because I don't want to have as many people coming together in one spot. So I want to extend the work day, I want to extend the work week, and create more flexible work schedules because I have to. I need to keep people safe. I also need to deal with possibly childcare issues now that our schools are still not fully open. Struggles with increased unchallenged unemployment benefits. We've all heard this again. We're thankful that the federal government came out with the pandemic unemployment assistance program. However, for those jobs that are lesser paid or entry level, it really posed unique challenges because unemployment was better than working. You were being paid the same, if not more, with the assistance packages of the $600 a week or the $300 or the $400 a week, in addition to unemployment benefits, and not working. So I'm home, I'm safe, and I'm still receiving income that is at least as good, if not better, than what I had before. Really creating unique challenges for employers that were looking to recruit or retain employees in this space. Investing in mental health. Again, it's one of the underlying factors of this entire pandemic as a health crisis, is what it's doing to the mental health of our employees, the mental health of our dependents, and the mental health in general. Culture with the remote and reduced workforce. So again, we spent all that time on developing strategy and instituting strategy around what's our culture from a workplace perspective. How is our culture unique? How is our culture better? How is our culture something that you want to be a part of? And now that's all changed because we have either remote workforce. How do we permeate culture from within four walls to extended work from home, and a reduced workforce? Again, I'm not, culture is a lot of who I work with. Do I have friends at work? Do I feel like my work is a work family? And now that I'm not seeing them, or I'm not seeing them as often, how do we make sure that that cultural component is still happening? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, like nothing we've seen before. Again, we've all had those words, but now we're adding social injustice to the mix. And again, how are we making these programs real and different and talking about them a lot more than just words on a page. And most recently now, vaccine policies, again, with the approval of the vaccines to help fight COVID-19 in December. What are our policies as employers around vaccines and discussing that? A lot of things to talk about. So a little bit more on health and safety of employees. Again, now more than ever, we're looking at a deep look into protections, not only from health insurance, but our workspace. These are critical elements. Health insurance, again, anyone who's been impacted by COVID-19, while testing was free, there's still a health insurance coverage component. Again, depending on how the disease has impacted, if somebody had suffered from COVID-19 or their family members have, or now taking a look, because when there's a health crisis, people start to look at their own health, even apart from COVID-19. So again, it just causes concern and unrest within your own health. And you then start to look at your insurance coverage. So again, are your providers, are they available? Do you have out of network coverage? It starts to put, employees look at health coverage now with a different lens than they had before. And the cost, where I'm at with cost, where are we on other types of programs is my employer covering under our health insurance coverage? So it really forced employers to take a look at their insurance coverage and make sure that it was adequate, if not better, than what it was before. And at the very least, it forced employers to really do, a communication around this. Let employees know, a lot of people take for granted, they get that ID card, they stick it in their wallet, and they don't look at it until they need to. So again, it was letting employers telling employees what their coverage is, where they can go to. Again, focus on, we know a lot of employees were not getting well visits or other types of checkups and testing because of COVID. Did your policy have telemedicine? It's really started to look at what does our policy have and have not, because people are paying attention. Revised PTO and sick and leave of absence policies. Okay, so not only did we have to contend with what the CARES and the Families First policies have put in place with expansion of FMLA, as well as paid sick leave due to COVID policies, but how did these policies mesh with our existing policies? Did we have a lot of, were people taking PTO? Were people rolling over PTO because we were confined to our homes and there's nowhere to go? And we didn't anticipate that. Sick and other leave of absence policies, again, that may or may not have been COVID related. How did our policies play nice with the mandates or on a standalone basis for employees that needed to utilize that? Safety, again, PPE in the workplace. We never thought that the mask was going to be part of our work uniform, and now it is. And again, if we're requiring individuals to wear masks in our workplace, then we're obligated to provide, again, additional PPE, from gloves to face shields to protective barriers to a whole lot of cleaning supplies. Again, just looking at that and making sure that we've got policies around that. If people, many offices, if people are using the same copier, making sure you sanitize before or after, or if people are work sharing in the same office or cubicle, how are you making sure that they're sanitized and clean? Social distancing. If we have employees that could not be 6 feet apart, how are we dealing with that? Were we creating alternative workspaces? Again, going back to those flexible and enhanced schedules, were we implementing that so that more people could be in the office with at times, but with less individuals? How do we work when we can't be 6 feet apart? Kitchen and break room areas and other common areas, did we keep them open? Did we close them? Did we put different types of capacity limits? How did we work with vendors coming into the workplace? Meetings, were all meetings remote? Were we allowing any type of in-person meetings? Travel, were we allowing our employees to travel for work? What if our employees had to travel out of state? And now we had to contend with all those state regulations over where you have to quarantine before and after and where you don't. And client visits, were we letting clients come to our office anymore? Customers come to our workplaces anymore? How are we extending those policies to make sure that when people came to our workplaces, they were still keeping our employees safe? So a real lot to contend with like never before, making sure that those policies are in place. They're going to be here to stay. Again, I think, you know, everyone believes that 2021 will hopefully turn the corner on the pandemic, but it won't be completely over. And we will still be having to contend with these health and safety and employment issues, you know, as a priority. I say that some of these things, or my opinion is that some of these things will never leave. Again, the focus on how we keep people together, the sanitation and the cleanliness, I think that some of those changes are here for the long term, if not forever. Creating and mandating flexible work schedules. So again, when I go back to 2020, the 2019 and 2020 in strategy, flexible work was something that was requested by a lot of employees. Can I work from home? Can I have flexible hours? Again, about 20 to 25% of the US workforce had a flexible work schedule, but 80% wanted one. So it was something that we were considering, that this might be a nice to have. How do we design our jobs around flexible work, people working from home, or just different schedules? But now it's more of, again, that table stakes mentality where we've got to have flexible work schedules. Especially if we've allowed some positions to work from home and it's been successful, how do we change that back if the employee doesn't want to? Not only if the employee possibly doesn't feel safe of coming back to the office, but they may prefer working from home. And if it worked, how do we say, sorry, your job now is back in the office? So how do we change that? Or how do we keep it going? How do we decide who can work from home and who can't? Again, a lot of decisions around how we do that. And, as HR professionals and managers and owners, we want to be able to offer these flexible schedules, but we want to make sure that we're being fair and consistent and we're non-discriminatory. And again, that it's working for the company as well. So it's, a lot more thought process. Creating flexible schedules, again, because we have to. We don't want 100 people arm to arm in an office or one location if we can help it. So it's how do we spread out the work? How do we change that work site so that we can have less people in a period of time? And the return of full-time and classroom instruction. Again, we're still contending with schools being completely closed or even in a hybrid situation. And we've got caregivers that are full-time workers, and this has certainly caused a lot of unique challenges with people not being able to work at all, or again, needing more flexibility in their schedule because they're helping school their children, from 9 to 3 in the afternoon. And again, that is the environment we're living in now. And I don't see that going away completely, at least for the remainder of this school year. And again, what's happening in the summer? Are camps still closed? Are they restricted? A lot of things to be able to contend with working parents. And the need now for permanent work from home policies. So we may have worked from home very quickly as a result of what we had to do when we started to close down and wanted to be safe. And in Pennsylvania, again, there is a telework mandate that if your job is allowed to telework, you are required to telework. So now how do we change those policies, possibly from temporary policies or interim policies to more permanent work from home policies? We might want to rethink how we do that. Contending with unemployment. So again, as employers, how do we support, if we had to lay off or furlough any of our employees, again, then they were able to receive the unemployment benefits. We heard a lot of angst over now employees don't want to return. Anxiety of workers to return to the workforce. So I'm happy to have my job back, but I'm afraid I don't want to come back in. Anxiety goes back to that whole mental health element. Anxiety is a very big, real issue with workers. And it's something that we need to contend with, especially if I have the ability to be able to remain on unemployment. And then general recruiting concerns for jobs paying less than $20 an hour. That $20 an hour is like the magic mark nationally. Again, with the unemployment assistance that come out of these stimulus packages, it's, why would I need to look for a job when unemployment is so good? It's something that we're definitely having to contend with. So I'll spend some time on this because I get a lot of questions about contending with unemployment, especially now since we're back into that unemployment being better than your regular unemployment with the additional stimulus package that's now in effect through March 31st. So strategies that, employers might want to consider is, I know no one wants to hear this, but it's adjusting the pay rates. I think you need to take a closer look at if you're hovering around, that starting, everybody's looking to, there's talk of moving the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but if you're not there, do you go there quickly because you just need to get people in? If you're already at the 15 to 18 to $20 an hour, again, do I go to 21 or $22 an hour? It's looking at where do those pay rates need to be adjusted because I'm contending with unemployment. Or if I don't want to adjust my pay rates, how do I implement possibly retention bonuses or monthly incentives? Again, so when we adjust the base hour of pay, you're usually stuck with that. So what we're now seeing employers just get creative is I'll keep that pay rate maybe at the $15 or $14 an hour, but to incent people to work or to stay, maybe we'll look at doing retention bonuses. They can all be performance-based or, put some metrics in place or even just allow time to be one of the metrics or monthly incentives. Again, so it's dangling those financial carrots to these workers to say, coming to work will be better than unemployment from a financial perspective because we're looking at doing bonuses or monthly incentives. Major enhancements to safety in the workplace. Again, for those workers that are, they've got anxiety, they've got health concerns, and again, they're at home and they're receiving, unemployment and they're not having to go to work. Well, how do we make sure that they feel that when they have to come back to work, they feel safe? Again, it's regular, repetitive communications. It's allowing a mechanism for employees to voice their concerns if they don't feel safe, and it's addressing them. So again, it's removing the safety anxiety or reducing the safety anxiety in the workplace by putting these programs in place and regularly communicating them. Don't just leave it up to assumption. Being creative with flexible work arrangements, the shifts in the schedules, again, not only for those working parents who are caregivers at home, but help address the safety issues as well. It's we might be saying yes to a workable, flexible work arrangement where we previously were saying no. Suspending drug testing. And this is, again, for those positions that aren't required to drug test, but we do have employers that choose to drug test. Maybe we're going to suspend drug testing. Again, not so much, we certainly don't want people to feel, oh, well, now's my chance to come to work at this place. But drug testing is another hurdle that people have to overcome in order to be employed. And usually that involves going to a facility. So if I don't want to go to any type of facility, again, because I've got anxiety or I've got health concerns and safety issues, we are seeing this trend of employers suspending drug testing during COVID or while we're still in the state of emergency. Again, and then bringing it back. So, it is another thing that you can possibly take a look at. One less hurdle and a recruit has to go over to become your employee. Creating a strong and clear message around the company value proposition. Again, we all know that work is more than just pay. What is your total rewards proposition? Because unemployment is just finances. It doesn't come with health insurance benefits. It doesn't come with paid time off. It doesn't come with retirement. It doesn't come with a culture or connection of working with other employees. And if you don't have that strong, clear message so that employee realizes that working for you is better than remaining on unemployment, you're definitely going to be at a loss. So it's really creating that strong, crystal clear message around the company value proposition. Investing in mental health, again, part of that value prop, part of something that we need to talk about. This statistic of 41% of employees, this is as of January 2021, they feel burnt out, drained, exhausted from their work. Again, and we've got a pandemic going on, and that's a big number, 41% of now basically coming forward and saying, I've got a little bit of a mental health issue right now. And even if it is just feeling down, having anxiety, depressed, hopeless, it's a reality. And that reality starts to come into the workplace. The other issue that we're seeing is that most employees don't utilize existing services. Again, these are things that are contained within your health insurance plans, your existing EAP plans. Again, coaching or counseling that possibly if you've got on-site wellness or even your human resources department, we find that a lot of employees don't utilize these services. They may not even know. So again, communication and a dedicated strategy is critical to address this issue. Just a little chart again of this is national numbers of employee awareness of mental health options within their employer. So 47%, again, no idea what is offered, no support of programs offered, and then support of the programs available. So again, these are real numbers, real issues in the workforce of how we deal with mental health with our employees. So how do we invest in mental health again as an employer? And now is the time that we can revamp or enhance our mental health strategy, obviously within our health insurance programs, our wellness programs, employee assistance programs, either revamping them, increasing them, or deploying them if it's something new. Worksite help, again, creating stress-free zones, quiet spaces. Again, talking about this helps reduce the stigma and create a positive workplace. I think it's a very powerful message when the CEO of a company says, hey, I'm struggling. I've got anxiety. I've got issues. I sometimes don't have the answer. And again, letting it know that employees know they're not alone. And then focus on strategy on prevention and intervention. Again, making sure that if you have these programs available, it's repeating and communicating to your employees, being more proactive, not just reacting when an employee comes forward, but letting the employee know that we've got some tools and we've got help, and it's okay to come forward and ask. And how do we extend that culture that we're worked so hard on to build, to recruit and retain employees now that we're in a remote or reduced workplace? Again, still always wondering, now we've got employees that are home and they're possibly online all day, and now we've got job ads coming at them all over the place. We still have to be cognizant that employees can possibly be looking to leave. And, this was a quote that I found was very powerful, is that dissatisfaction can be a result of a toxic workplace culture. So again, if we're not focused on our culture, or we're just saying we're in a pandemic, so we're going to take a break from culture, we certainly can't do that. We still want to make sure that we're creating and sustaining a healthy workplace for employees. So how do we do that? Again, strong CEO and senior leadership, the tone at the top. We've got to, still let people know that our culture is evolving and it's still very important. The communication, again, that company branding. Don't assume people know because they heard something at new hire orientation or at their last performance review. Communication around anything having to do with culture and employee matters needs to be very regular. Create a sense of employee empowerment. Again, own your own way, own your own destiny, own your own development. These are tools that, pre-COVID was one of those cultural elements that would help support culture, is when employees felt empowered within their own career. Coaching and sponsorship. Again, demonstrated mission, vision, and values, not just having words on a paper or a pledge in our handbook, but really demonstrating them. And again, remember the why. The why did you join us in the first place? The why are you here for 20 years? Obviously, it's getting those communications and that messaging across the entire workforce. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, those DEI initiatives are, very, very popular, very on trend, very important. And now with the events of last year, again, adding social injustice and empathy to the equation there. So DEI initiatives need to be more than just words. Again, now more than ever, your employees are watching. What are you doing? Did you have messaging after the George Floyd incident or after the BLM movement on Washington? What did you talk about when the events at the Capitol happened? Again, employees are looking to see, how does their employer feel about this? How does senior management feel about this? How does their manager feel about this? It's an area where you don't want to be silent. Again, remembering the events of the past summer, what have we learned? What are we doing different? How are we still keeping this as top of mind? And then empathy for others. Again, the empathetic employer is, an area where if you are an empathetic employer, you want to be able to tell recruits and your employees how you're feeling about those things, because those attributes are something that employees these days are feeling are very powerful in creating a connection. COVID has probably touched every employee in some way, either by the illness itself with themselves or their family, extended family, death, neighbors, coworkers, friends. And childcare. So again, this pandemic, nobody has been unscathed by COVID. It's a reality, and it has definitely impacted and affected our employees differently and uniquely. And are we talking about this? Do we have empathy for those employees? Are we demonstrating that? Are we allowing people to be able to, again, get through this? Coming up towards, the end of things that we're talking about for 2021 and having some strategies. And again, late December, we have 2 vaccines that have been approved. It looks like we're going to have 2 more approved within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And now we're talking about, okay, have we really now turned the corner on this pandemic? And if we believe that the vaccine is part of the solution, then what are we going to do as an employer? What are we going to do for employees? Do we have a strategy? And the strategy right now is really, you've got 3 options. You can mandate. The EEOC and the DOL have come out and allowed private employers to mandate employees to have vaccines, again, with conditions. Or are we going to strongly encourage, because we don't want to mandate, but we may want to strongly encourage? Or are we going to not care? And I don't mean that we don't care about the pandemic and we don't care about people getting better and us turning the corner, but as an employer, we don't care if our employees, how they feel one way or another, and we just want to be neutral. So we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of these strategies and how you may or may not want to deploy them. So mandating the vaccine. Again, the potential benefits of mandating the vaccine is, we believe, again, the science is telling us that more people vaccinated will have more protections against COVID-19. And then again, we'll be able to reach herd immunity and hopefully wipe out this pandemic. And again, the science and history shows that this is true. This is what the world has been able to do with things around polio, smallpox, the Spanish flu. Again, it's the way that these ailments are no longer are mainly due to the vaccination process and achieving herd immunity. So if we believe that's true, and we will have a safer and healthier workforce, it may be one of the reasons why we want to mandate the vaccine. And again, if we've got a safer and healthier vaccinated workforce, at least our business will probably have a faster return to normal business operations. And I say normal is probably, what it looked like in 2019. Increased trust from customers and workers. Again, if our customers and our clients know that we've got a mandatory vaccine policy, they might be, feel safer in doing business with us. They might want to do more business with us, again, because health and safety is less of a concern. Potential drawbacks. So there's definitely increased risk of liability, the ADA, GINA, and HIPAA concerns. Again, these are where, we have to allow provisions for waivers. We have to make sure that we're maintaining confidentiality. We have to maintain that once we know this information, that we're not using it in discriminatory purposes. And again, even if we have the best of communications, the best of waivers, all the legal language that support this, if there's never a fail-safe in an employee bringing suit because they know you have this information and they possibly were protected under the ADA for not getting the vaccine, and now they weren't promoted. So again, that's where the risk of liability is now something, they didn't do something, and now it's possibly going to harm them in their career path at the company. So again, increased risk of liability. Increased litigation risk from lawsuits of employers or adverse reaction to the vaccine. Okay, well, now I'm making my employee get the vaccine and they have an adverse reaction, again, whether it's an allergic reaction that's something temporary, or what if it's something that's more permanent and it results in a hospital stay. It results in possibly longer term effects. Does the employer have risk of litigation because they're mandating the vaccine? Again, these are all uncharted waters here. So there's always the risk, but how much of a risk? Are there going to be protections possibly for employers that do this? Right now, that the law is silent on that. Employees may express safety concerns again. So I might not be, get a religious or a disability exemption from the mandate, but I just personally just don't want to get the vaccine. I have my own safety concerns. I'm unsure. I'm not ready yet. So, there's a drawback there that possibly employees will leave because they just personally do not want to get the vaccine, or they don't want to get the vaccine at this time. If you have a unionized workforce, obviously the unions may object to pretty much anything mandatory. So you obviously, if you do want to deploy a mandatory vaccine policy and you've got a unionized workforce, you're going to have to work within the confines of your CBA and union leadership to see if this can get passed. And if they don't pass it because they won't allow it under the CBA, then, and you want to have a mandatory vaccine policy, how do you have non-unionized employees who are forced to, have to follow the mandate while the unionized employees do not, and they're working next to one another? So again, just something you need to contend with. The negative morale regarding mandatory. Again, usually the word mandatory, people just in general do not like it, especially employees. So when you're using the word mandatory, you have to be prepared for employees just saying, I don't want to work any place where anything is mandatory, and they possibly may leave. And then currently, right now, again, it'd be very hard putting a mandatory vaccine policy in place, at least in the near term, because the vaccine supply and the distribution is just not there. There's a delay. And then obviously we know that both the CDC and the state of Pennsylvania and all states across the country have a phased approach of who would be allowed to get the vaccine. So again, you may want to put in a mandatory vaccine policy, but you might not be able to achieve that, at least in 2021, mainly because of supply and demand issues that we're currently being faced with. So strongly encouraging again. And, this starts with leadership in the company saying, we are strongly encouraging. You can't strongly encourage in silence or just assume. So it starts with, again, leadership coming from the top over. We are strongly encouraging that we want our employees to get the vaccine. And it may even start with a demonstration or knowledge that, the CEO, the owner, the management team has, voluntarily received the vaccine, and they're voluntarily telling you that they have. So again, potential benefits, less risk of liability, again, because it's strongly encouraging. So again, less risk around ADA, GINA, and HIPAA. Potential for better employee relations because we're not mandating. Again, we're strongly encouraging. We're not forcing. We're not using the word mandatory. So it just feels like it's less stress, less pressure, more likable from an employee perspective. And again, right now, federal, state, and local COVID vaccination laws, they're changing, very, very quickly. So again, right now, while the mandate is allowable, who knows if that's going to remain? So again, these things are changing, and you might not want to be the first company out there with mandating and testing these new laws when these new laws may possibly change, 6 months down the road. Potential drawbacks, again, the liability if the virus spreads in the workplace, especially if you are an employer that has, a single-sided location with many employees working less than 6 feet apart. So obviously you have to contend with this virus being around a little bit longer or impacting your workforce. We all know that, if one employee gets COVID, we have to go through contact tracing. This may put a whole department in quarantine for the 10 to 14 days. So again, this stays around a little bit longer when there's no mandate of the vaccine. And right now, it's unclear whether any waivers relating to working with others or not vaccinated will be enforceable. So again, this is all uncharted territory. So how do we protect employees that I'm vaccinated but you're not? Again, and now I'm possibly, or the spread of COVID is happening within the workplace. These are all things that again help increase liability and risk and possibly put the employer at a disadvantage. And if you don't care, again, I'm not going to mandate, I'm not going to encourage, I'm not even going to talk about the vaccine. Well, I wouldn't recommend this. One, it could certainly cause risk because the employer is not taking a stand or making it known. Employees are left to do their own thing. And as we talked about, one of the number one methods in recruiting and retaining employees in 2021 is health and safety. So if you're not talking about the vaccine, you're risk not talking about health and safety, and this can cause risk that employees might not want to join you, or they might not want to stay. It'll also help create those cultural disconnects. So again, we just spent some time talking about culture and making sure that you have culture and what is your culture, and making sure that culture permeates through the employees. And if you've got a culture that is around health, safety, wellness, employee concern, and you're not even talking about the vaccine, that would cause a disconnect. And it may cause reputational harm, again, to your client base. If your clients don't know whether you're pro-vaccine or not, or how you're even handling it, it may cause them to think about you a little bit differently if you just don't care. And again, I'm using don't care basically as just being neutral, but if it starts to take neutral, starts to turn into really, they just don't care. Well, I don't know if I want to work for you. I don't know if I want to do business with someone who just doesn't care. Again, it has a very negative connotation. So again, all different things to think about again with vaccine policies. And I know 2021 is probably where you could start thinking of these policies and maybe not implementing, again, mainly because the supply and the demand and the way the vaccine is going to be distributed, by falling into certain categories. But we have to look beyond this again, and all the experts are stating that, even once we achieve herd immunity, that probably won't happen until sometime in 2022. There's also talk about, again, with these new variants, is that maybe one vaccination doesn't do it. It may go the route of the flu, where an annual vaccine is what's recommended. So it's, if you're one of those employers that offers the flu vaccine or offers flu vaccine clinics, now are we going to, is COVID-19 vaccine going to be part of that offering as well? So it's not just thinking about this in the near term, but it's thinking about it in the short term, which is probably the next 18 to 24 months. And then again, how does this fold into your longer term strategy, especially if you are an employer that is looking to beef up their wellness plans? It's thinking about how does this fold into that. I think this is the first time where I'm really right on time with 45 minutes, and then allowing the last 15 minutes really to be for Q&A and hear what you're thinking and address any of the questions that you possibly may have going on right now. So I am going to stop sharing, and I don't know, Sue, are we gathering questions in the chat function or in the Q&A function?
And we do not have any messages in the chat, and then I don't think that the Q&A actually box was open, but I mean, anyone could unmute themselves and ask a question too. I think what was going through my mind, Kim, was, really, have you been dealing with companies then, obviously with the question of the vaccine, but people that have not been openly communicating in the past, like really to send out some sort of correspondence from the employer that, hey, I just, I'm looking to get my vaccine. How are you? Where does that line go from not being across the line and having those conversations?
Yeah, so that's, again, these are things, your own personal health or your own personal beliefs. Sometimes we're keep them to yourself, because I might not want to let others know about that because it may be negative. And this is where you're starting to see a little bit of a change. Again, this is all new territory here. We typically didn't have management or owners expressing their own health concerns in the past, but this is now where employees, if I'm an employee, I'm looking to leadership. I'm looking to leadership to enlighten me, to let me know where are they feeling on the subject. I sometimes, and especially when we've got younger people in the workforce, again, those, younger single people, it's possibly their first job, under 25, they look to leadership as a mentor, as somebody who's setting the example, similarly to the way, one looks at their parents. And it's where do you stand on the issue? I might not listen to you, but I want to at least hear. Or if I am looking you into that light as a manager or an owner of a company, and I have respect for you, and I believe that you have good judgment and you're intelligent, I want to hear what you have to say, because your opinion matters. Your opinion may weigh into my opinion, or it may give me validation. Again, I'm not the only one feeling this way, and I've got somebody in a place of authority who is. That's very validating to a lot of people. So again, it's staying silent on, I think, anything COVID related, from the vaccine to mental health components, anxiety, health, safety, business plans, anything that's changed as a result of COVID. We lost clients, we gained clients, we're in a new service, we're out of a service. those lines of communications need to be very, very transparent and very, very regular. I'm hearing a lot now where people have put in a lot of great, you know, programs and support programs when people had to quickly work from home, or now we've got staggered shifts, and now it's health and safety. And that all happens, you know, the March, April, May timeframe, and then we've kind of taken a break. And COVID hasn't taken a break, so it's the people now that possibly been hired since or hired during the pandemic, did they get the same information? It's making sure that information is regular. You've got to keep talking about these things, and you've got to allow a mechanism for feedback. Again, for your employees to feel safe and coming forward with a safety issue, and not feeling that and feeling okay about doing that. So there's got to be two-way communication, and you've got to keep talking.
Great. We do have a question that came in, so within the chat, and so anyone else, please do that, or we can, you could just you break in later. But this question is, what do you think of the effect of stimulus and perhaps future benefits will be on hourly employees if everyone is searching for hourly help in every industry, and you have a comprehensive benefits package? Pretty good starting rate, cash, tips, etc. What can you use to differentiate yourself?
Yeah, so again, that's a tough decision. And again, you've got to know that you're competitive. So again, a lot of times people think I think I know, and now your competition just isn't your industry or your competition down the street or local competition. Your competition is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the federal government with the unemployment benefits. So while you may had a pretty good starting rate in the past compared to your competitors, you've got to look at now with those stimulus packages, what those benefits are. And you may have to adjust your rate again. And I wouldn't go by what you think. It's got to be by what you know, because again, you've got to really know that you are the highest paying, in your industry. That you do have the better benefit package, that you've got to be able to up your ante. And that's just, the hard facts of the matter is that while your pricing or while your revenue may have not have changed, the labor component and the benefit component will probably have to change to be able to contend with this, or you are going to be at a disadvantage. You've got to be able to monetize that package and be able to be very bold in saying, I know that I am paying more than X. And I know what unemployment is happening, and here's how we're able to differentiate against that. Again, don't leave it to the candidate or your employees to assume or think they know that. You've got to be bold, and you've got to be crystal clear in being able to deliver that message.
Could you do something like have an incentive for right now, like if you want to hire someone to compensate for through the end of March, and then have some sort of policy that would adjust, or is that going to be looked at kindly?
Yes, and that's very common. That started last year again with that additional $600 stimulus, is that people were matching that as a bonus. So, or doing things in the short term, either with retention bonus, I'm going to only, pay a stipend, either, people were calling it hardship pay. So again, it's like, I know you're working through the pandemic and we recognize that. We're going to give you hardship pay, whether it's a couple dollars an hour more or a flat rate. And again, mirroring that so that they were able to contend with the benefits that were happening on the unemployment side. In addition to, we're giving you paid time off, paid holidays, health insurance, retirement benefits. Again, so it was in addition to that. So those bonuses or incentives could be very short term. And I mean very short term by just the now, possibly as a sign-on bonus, or to coincide with these stimulus packages. And being clear and transparent in what that message is perfectly legal, and it's probably the better way to do it, again, because if you can't sustain that incentive package as an employer, you wouldn't want to build it into the hourly rate. You have a very hard time taking somebody down from salary or hourly pay. But the variable pay, you certainly are allowed to have a little bit more discretion and timing.
Great. I don't see any more. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or anyone who has been thinking about a piece of the presentation. There was so much in there and so much to think about as we're looking at policies to stay competitive. And I think as Zoom has opened up this possibility for people to be anywhere and catch this program, people are able to work now in so many different areas. So I think that competition outside of the hourly workers is really, you can get a job anywhere and work remotely.
And,
Um,
and that's a good point, Sue, because we are seeing that again, and I'll even see it because, at Baker Tilly, we have a large, we hire probably 500 entry level, kids right out of school a year. And we're in a lot of major markets. And now a lot of those people are not living in the major market. So again, because you can work from home. So you're definitely seeing recruitment efforts start to expand. I don't need to live where, near my work location, especially while I'm in a remote environment. So, I know a lot of these, especially these recent college grads are saving money by living back home or living in a cheaper place. But you do also need to watch again, because and I won't bore everybody with this, but again, if you're operating, where your labor comes from, could possibly create nexus issues on taxation and employment laws. So again, we're all familiar with hiring talent in our own backyard, and that's where our location is. But now, what if I'm hiring somebody who lives in New Jersey or New York, or who lives in Florida or California, and they could do the job remote? You may be subject to different taxation and different employment laws. So just be cognizant of that. Not a no, but you may have to be cognizant of some different changes around payroll and HR when you're employing people that are not connected, do not live in the work jurisdiction.
And then a question to that point, someone is wondering if you might speak to managing the issue of trust and social loafing within one's virtual teams when you're not there to walk by someone's area and kind of check on them and say hello. I mean, any ideas on managing that?
Yeah, so this is something, again, for years, I'd say for the past 10 years, again, I've done a lot, in changing those cultural elements is how do we become more outcomes based again? And this is all generational. Started with millennials in the workplace over wanting more independence, wanting more, say into my own career path, wanting all this flexibility. And, in order to be able for employers to be able to do that and say, yes, 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 well, now I got to be outcomes based. And there's a lot of trust. So it's where whether you have, like in our world, we've got charge hour requirements, or in the sales world, you might have sales quotas you need to make, or you might have other types of, key performance indicators that get you there. Now it's changed because now maybe I don't get there in 40 hours a week, or maybe in 52 weeks of the year. And it's kind of been, deploying an honor system like never before. But again, you've got to make sure that you are clear and concise over what are those key performance indicators. Granted, we know that there's a lot of trust, and you've got to be able to hold people accountable. So again, it's forced employers that have not wanted to make the switch to outcomes based or work flexibility, because let's face it, we've got a lot of people that might be a little bit old school, and it's like, if I don't see you, you're not working, so it's kind of forced us into, well, I kind of have to trust. And guess what? If the work is getting done, well, the proof is in the pudding. So that's what you've got to be able to do. But you've got to be clear, concise, and very transparent in here's what I give you, now here's what you need to give in return. And you've got to trust that it's happening, and you've got to check in and hold people accountable. So, I'd say be cautious in those things. Don't say you could deliver something if you can't. And then in your holding people accountable, we don't want to be looking like, Big Brother is watching 24/7. We want to be able to set milestones and timing over when we're going to have these check-ins. Let's make sure we've got deliverables, we've got timelines, we've got milestones, and we can check in on that stuff to make sure that somebody is progressing, or if somebody needs help, or if somebody is failing, we now start the process on how to performance manage that person.
Right. Do you find like with younger people that you're wanting to, or just touch base with them more, because then they're missing out on the culture that you've established within the office. And then I don't see any more questions. I think that'll take us to the end.
Yeah, and that's again, when everybody moved to the Zoom environment, or again, I'm not working with the people I worked with before, it's how do you build that connection? Now you're hearing a lot about Zoom fatigue. It's like, oh, I don't want another Zoom meeting, or the Zoom happy hours have started to subside. And again, it's hard to keep up that consistency and regularity, but you've got to be able to do that. So, now we're seeing where we used to have whole teams on a Zoom happy hour. Now it might just be one-on-ones. It might just be a group of 4. Again, it's getting it down to a little bit of a smaller group, a more intimate setting, so people could really have a conversation instead of just sitting and watching boxes on a screen. It's really, you've got to be creative at being able to do some of those things. We're also seeing, again, a return to at least a little bit of in-person. Maybe I will have a meeting with my team because I can ensure that we're more than 6 feet apart voluntarily, been decided, and people are wearing masks. So, we started to see that over the summer when the weather was nice. If things were able to be moved outside, we'd be able to have, where it's allowed to have a small gathering, provided that we're the 6 feet apart and wearing masks. So you'll start to see some of that happening. We're also seeing, and again, things outside of Zoom. It's, maybe we don't do a Zoom meeting. The other thing we've seen is the pressure to be on Zoom. It's like, oh, you know what? I just spent the night, helping my kids with school. I just don't feel like being on in Zoom. I want, people are saying, yeah, I'm working from home in my sweats and not doing my hair, but then Zoom is like, but Zoom is seeing me. I don't want to do that. So it's subsiding on the Zoom pressure and not feeling like people need to be on, even when they're on Zoom. We can be a little bit more relaxed. It's okay to be off camera. We're not going to judge you because you're not off camera, because you're off camera and everybody else is on. So it's taking in all those little personal aspects so that it is a little bit less stressful, a little bit more informal, and more of a connection.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for all of your insights. And I will follow up with everyone with Kim's contact information. They are just a wealth of information and resource for all of your companies. So thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Okay. Take good care. Bye-bye.